Okay, so this final section of today, we're going to talk about protovation, which is a kind of fanciful term for prototyping both the technology you need behind your product and the market you're hoping to penetrate. So let's link it back to the first lecture today, which was on integrated product development. And one of the first things we need to do before creating a prototype is think about where the burning issues are around our business in its current state. So we want to look at where the biggest question marks reside. So let's imagine for now, for the rest of this presentation, we're sat in front of some investors with a bundle of money, and we want to know what's going to stop them, what do they need to know before they can invest in our business. We need to answer questions on the market dimension, such as, do the users want this? How much will they pay for it? Or will they pay that much for it? Is the market size really that big? So are there enough people who are willing to pay that amount of money? Does the product work that we're expecting? Does it look good? Does the production techniques produce the desired properties of the device such that we can sell it with a high enough quality? Can we produce it at low enough cost to make large enough profit margin when we sell it at certain volumes? So when you think about your business at the moment, you should be trying to identify which are your biggest question marks that reside over your business. So there'll be a variety of different question marks. Think about which your biggest one is. I'll just give you a few examples here. This is a project which was conducted at DTU called OroClean, and they won some venture cup funding. And one of the questions they had, well, basically this project was about creating a centrifuge, a hand-winched centrifuge, which, if you don't know, it basically spins things around in circles and uses a centrifugal force to separate out components. This is a handheld centrifuge which separates the mercury from gold. So people who are going to find gold can actually separate out the mercury at the spot and then sell refined gold. So there's a definite incentive for the people who are finding the gold, but also good for the environment because it removes mercury from the gold being found. The big question mark they had wasn't the market. We knew people would want it. We knew there was a market position for it. The big question mark for them was, from a hand winch, can they produce enough centrifugal force to separate out the gold from the mercury? So that you can do that, be either investing money up front to get a prototype, but what happens if you don't have the money up front? So the one thing they did was they went to a professor at, I can't remember which university it was, I think it was MIT, and just basically got him to do some simple calculations around the basic principle and got him to write a letter of recommendation saying, based on the requirements, he believes that a hand winch centrifuge will produce enough centrifugal force to make this separation. And that was enough to convince the committee at the Venture Cup that this was a feasible project and that they should get some funding to take it forward. So that was how they dealt with their biggest question mark. Virgin Galactic, the Virgin attempt at a commercial space program, they are trying to sell flights into space for $200,000 per flight, and you're up in space for 4.5 minutes. So what might be the big question marks around the Virgin Galactic space program? If you have a huge wad of cash and Richard Branson's coming up to you saying, we need some money for our space program, what is it you want to know? What are the burning questions with this idea? Business venture.
When can you fly?
Sorry?
When can you fly?
When can you fly? As in, when in the year? How soon we can deliver the product? Or how soon you can deliver the product?
Safety issues.
Sorry?
Safety issues.
Safety issues. So these are things regarding the technical aspects of this. And I think that's right. So one of the ways they've had to get around this is, I think they've actually dropped the price of the tickets, because I think people were willing to pay more for that. But they dropped it and get people to pay up front for reserving spaces on their space programs, so they can build and refine more prototypes before they get more money in. So a way they've got around it is by getting pre-orders into their market. Let's just stop working. Okay. There was an article that I found online which was Innovations of the Future, and this was, Innovations of Tomorrow, I should say. This was the rolling arcade, so these handheld supports in buses. It was suggesting they should have arcade systems on so people can kind of play games as they're travelling. If you're an investor, what are your questions of this particular project, business?
I think the safety issue, if the person starts to play with it, he may come home.
Okay.
At the moment when the bus turns.
Okay. So, I mean, you're right, that is an issue. I wouldn't say that is one of the big questions of this. I think they can probably get enough support. Go ahead.
Durability.
Sorry?
The durability, you can still shape
The durability of it, okay.
I think it takes away one of the incomes, because sometimes you can put adverts in there instead of the game.
Okay, you could also integrate adverts into these games, I think.
Just, you know, you have a plastic handle and you can just put paper in there and it's really cheaper.
Yeah, that's true. Well, I actually think the technical feasibility of this is no problem. I mean, we can easily put games into things of this size, and we can easily create a handle grip. It's not technically a difficult thing to do. The question is, will bus companies actually think this is valuable? Will they want to pay money to have this, and will it actually provide benefit to the users? How many people are actually going to play with these instead of looking at their iPhone? I really can't see this ever working. So the big question mark for me as an investor is, will the bus company sanction this and pay to get this more upmarket version in their buses, other than through a gimmick? So that would be the big question over their business. Better Place. Has anybody heard of Better Place? I think we'll just spend the next 1 minute or so just listening to a video to describe what Better Place is about.
We don't want to put an end to this, or this, or even this. We just want to end the world's dependency on this, because it causes this.
The increase in the cost of a barrel of oil dramatic. Experts say the rising temperatures are proof of global warming.
Which is why we believe this.
We have to make the right moral decision. We have to make it immediately.
So we're making the world's first electric car network. It's made up of hundreds of battery switch stations, where you can switch this to this in less than 5 minutes. We call it Drive, Switch, Go. We're also building thousands of charge spots that look like this, so you can recharge at home, at work, or wherever else you stop. All this means you have all of this, everything you'd expect from this, and none of this. And no worries about this. The side effect? You help save this. This is Better Place.
So this particular business proposition, I mean, what are we convinced of? Well, I think we're all convinced of the motivations behind it, and it's a nice idea for the environment. But as an investor, what are the question marks behind this? What are we not sure of yet? If you've got this bundle of cash, what do you want to know of this product?
Is it possible to switch it?
Is it possible to switch? Okay. So the way they get around that is try and build these prototypes to show you can take in and out a single battery. But of course, the next question is it, can it be standardized to every car? And will the car industry accept it as a standard for switching batteries? Are there any other questions? Pardon? Post. Oh, cost. Yeah, absolutely.
How fast does it get the money back?
What's the payoff period? Yeah. Any other question marks you'd have? What about as a consumer? Would you drive one of these? You're shaking your head, why not?
Because I don't think really the electrical car is the future.
Okay. So why not? Why wouldn't you buy one?
Because you have, well, the technology in battery is not yet developed, and there are other possibilities like hydrogen cars that are more effective.
Okay. So let's say you've reached the market with this car now. One of the things we have to worry about is people like this gentleman here being skeptical of the technology. Will it have the performance required? Will people trust these battery-powered cars? Another thing I'd want to know, like the reason I don't drive an LPG car, are there enough fueling stations for this? Can I make the distance journeys that I want to make? Now, there are so many question marks around this company. They have received millions of euros of funding, millions of euros. But it's a real problematic business model, and they're struggling because they've got all these interdependent question marks. They can't roll out a partial solution. So I'm not really giving any business advice today in any of my lectures, but the one bit I would give, just trying to give you models and tools, but the one bit I would give is alarm bells should ring if your business model is anything like Better Places, where you cannot roll out a partial solution. What I mean by that is nobody is going to buy one of these electric cars until all of the fueling stations are out and ready, until the battery replacement systems are ready, until we know what the depreciation of these vehicles are. So Better Place have no opportunity to roll out small segments of their business. They have to roll out the entire system all in one, which means they need huge upfront funding. And if your business proposition is ever in this situation where you can't roll out small segments of the business, be careful, you might be in trouble. The other bit of advice I would give is this. When your business proposition, you can think of lots of people who might want to buy your product, but you cannot find this single customer who will definitely buy it to begin with, who will put in a pre-order of your product. That should also ring alarm bells. There's no substitute for someone actually saying, I want to buy it, I'll give you the money up front. So there should be alarm bells if you can't identify the single customer or group of customers that will definitely buy your product. So those are two bits of business advice that I would say around the major question marks of your business model. Now, we did some critiquing there of a few businesses which haven't quite reached market points yet. And now what I'd like you to do is the groups on this side of the room, so we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 groups, is that right? And 4 on this side. I'd like you to be investors for each other. So teams on this side are Team A, and teams on this side are Team B. And what I'd like you to do is, let me get this right, teams from Group A ask teams from Group B about their project's feasibility. So to begin with, Team A, you're the investors. You've got loads of money and you want to know whether to invest in these. Now when they're asking questions of you, you've got to write down these questions and think, what are the big question marks within your business model, within your business? So you're to critique them. And then afterwards, after 5 minutes, you've got 2 minutes to discuss together and think, where is the big problem with your business? So if you can, Team A, can you go and smooch up to Team B and start interrogating them on their business model and find out why you do or don't want to invest in them? So you've got 5 minutes. Go, go, go. Okay. So firstly, who felt like they and their team were slightly defensive over their business model when being asked questions? I think it's quite common for you to start trying to argue against the questions and say why they're wrong, why they're such idiots, why are they asking these questions, how can they not see the value? But of course the important thing is there'll be lots of idiots asking you questions. And if you haven't got across your business idea properly, then people will ask these questions. So you need to do something to prove your business case better. So these might be areas you go into prototyping. Now, these types of exchanges are one of the most important things you can do. Make sure you understand what is not understood about your business model and what is understood. And also, in addition to that, what still needs proving. So hopefully now you've got a list of questions about your own businesses. Okay, so why are we doing this? What's this got to do with prototyping? Well, the biggest problem with prototyping, the most common misconception is it's just a part of the development process. You have to prototype your product before it gets released. The point of a prototype is to test or trial something. And you need to know whether what you're testing or trialing is an important thing to trial and test. You haven't got long left in your development of your businesses. So you need to know the testing you do is dealing with the most crucial questions. So now you should have a list of crucial questions, and you can think about which of these perhaps you could prototype and validate. So first of all, what is a prototype? Has anybody got a answer for me?
Testing device.
It's a testing device. Proof of concept. So it provides some form of validation. So a model to test an aspect of the product's feasibility dealing with the burning questions. So don't prototype something if you already know what the answer to the test is going to be. Make sure you do your prototype so you can use it for testing for things you need to know the answer of. There are several different types of technical prototyping. First of all, proof of principle, a form study prototype, user experience prototype, visual prototype, and functional prototype. So the most common one that the engineers are working with are these proof of principles. And the reason they're particularly good is to find out which designs are not feasible, which designs won't work. It's very easy to rapid prototype some parts and machines, try them out, and you quickly learn a lot. Companies like Toyota promote fail often and early processes, meaning let's not discuss it around the table, just get the thing made quickly as a prototype, let's try it out, see if it works. You learn so much by early prototyping. Dyson have a big culture of prototyping. Before the first dual cyclone vacuum cleaner, he produced 5,127 prototypes. Now you can ask, did some of those constitute as prototypes? But they were some kind of models, something he was doing testing on. And if you go to the Dyson factory and the Dyson Innovation Centre near Bath, where I was doing research, he makes a big thing of it. You walk into the Dyson plant and all of the prototypes are all over the hallway. They show off their development process. And they still have this culture of prototyping testing. So most products now, every prototype will have to endure some 500 odd tests. One of them, the hammer test, where Dyson will pick up the model and throw it down an iron staircase to see if it's durable enough to last. These are the types of tests they will do. There are the other types of prototyping, the form study prototypes. So these are to decide whether the product's form, size and scale is appropriate for its use. So it can help assess ergonomic factors. So here are typical prototypes. Here are cutting blades, seeing how they fit in the hand, whether they're ergonomical, whether they're actually intuitive to use. And also, here's a form prototype of the Dyson Airblade cleaner. How does it fit onto a wall? Is it intuitive to put your hands? What sort of height would it have to be? Is it a normal thing to dry your hands in this way? These are what form prototypes are. Of course, these things don't have to work at all, but you learn a lot from them. You can quickly do some testing on these to say, would people know what to do? Can they actually make this motion? You can learn a lot. You don't have to develop the hand drying mechanism to do that. User experience prototype. So this is a model that allows early assessment of how potential users interact with the various elements. So here's an example of me working on a prototype for cockpit design. This was being developed by one of my colleagues. So we were wondering whether airplane pilots can actually control the things on their screen through a control panel down on their right-hand side through the display being up in front of them. And we didn't actually have to develop the entire cockpit to test this. We just had to develop some tests to see if it was intuitive for me to control something in front of me whilst moving my hand down here. And when something flashed up there, would I know where to put my hand? So we could do...
Was it useful?
Very. The tests are great, and we found out what is the best configuration for it. So we did various arrangements, and we found out which was the most appropriate. So it turns out it's very difficult to do this without looking down to your right. So it perhaps wasn't the most optimal arrangement. But you can do certain things like select a side and then operate it in the screen in front of you. But we can learn quickly from dirty prototypes like this. A visual prototype, you've seen this in the car industry, the old Volvo cardboard box. There, and beautiful BMW clay sculpted car. These things don't work, you can't drive them down the road, but you get to understand the user's emotional experience with the car. Do they like it? Do they think it's beautiful? What do the customers think and the market think? And finally, the functional prototype. Now, the functional prototype is the last checkbox. Before releasing your product, you want to produce almost a production-ready thing to see, is this going to work? Can we trial it one last time to make sure there's no problems? And it's supposed to as close as possible, simulate the final design. Now, there was an example of this in the UK, the advanced passenger train, which is written about quite a lot as a disaster case story. Their development process was running behind schedule. They developed their functional prototype and actually launched it as a final design. And this was a disaster because they didn't go through that final loop of finding out what were going to be the issues with this final functional prototype. Eventually the whole project went under, was a disaster because so many problems came up with this functional prototype, and they were already using it in actual production, carrying passengers on this thing. So it turned out to be a complete disaster. So prototypes are not production models. That's something to bear in mind. Here's a nice clip from Curb Your Enthusiasm demonstrating how users may interact with prototypes.
Into a couple of schmucks. This looks like an 8th grade science experiment, this thing. That's what it looks like.
No, it's going to be.
Oh, what does it know?
It's going to be an antenna with a camera attached, and you'll see it on the screen on the front.
Yeah.
Yeah, and how much money is that going to cost?
I don't know.
I don't trust him. Nah, we're never going to get to the party. Look at this. Fanciful traffic.
It's all this. It's close to this. Oh, hey!
Oh! All right, you're not going to believe this.
What?
We got a garbage truck at 12 o'clock. You go to your left. Go to your left.
What? Seriously?
Go to your left.
Really say something?
Yeah. Oh! Yeah!
I see it. Unbelievable.
Yeah!
I'll try to admit I'm wrong. This might really be a real thing.
That was unbelievable!
Well, of course, that's a ridiculous product and prototype, but it actually demonstrates quite well the purpose of the prototype. They said the final design is going to be a camera on the end of an antenna, but they didn't need to produce that to begin with. Let's just see whether this periscope has a use case. And that's exactly what they did in this thing. And it's also interesting to note Susie's initial response to it, which was, look at this, it looks like a 7th grade science project. So when you're testing your prototypes, you need to take into consideration the fact that they might repel, the people using your prototype might repel against it because of the way it looks. And you need methods so that you can get the right insights from it. Okay, here's some prototyping work I've done in the past. I was designing a locking mechanism for paintings in galleries and museums. And the first thing was I came up with some sketches and some ideas for how this locking mechanism works. I produced some CAD files and just got them, 3 products printed up on a printer or laser sintering machine, just tried out the working principle. Obviously the locks were going to look nothing like this, but these were prototypes to test the principle behind the lock. And then I could evaluate the 3 different concepts on how well they performed under certain tests. And I found out that although I thought this mechanism was better, it turned out this one was a lot better for numerous reasons. Later stages of the product development process, I had to develop a more robust design that could be used in a real situation. We could have user testing where people were pulling at the locks and seeing whether it really worked. Now, some brackets like this require extrusion processes. It's quite difficult to actually make this in small batch production, but when we go into full production, it's very cheap. So you just make do, and you make different components which have the same function but are fabricated in slightly different ways. It's pretty intuitive. And here was another proof of principle lock. This is more of a functional prototype where we could actually secure this to walls and paintings and see whether it really works, people were starting to like it, or whether there was problems with it. That was Mark 1, this is Mark 9, so I had 9 prototypes up to this stage, then looking at whether I can make the lock thin enough to go behind paintings in museums. And eventually it got to this stage, and there was enough interest from galleries and museums and companies, but the problem was I couldn't bring the production cost down to a reasonable level, so the project wasn't taken any further. But this is how you use prototyping to understand your product. There are different ways of prototyping. You don't have to get things machined up. Even if you have no competencies in programming or anything else, you can just do a paper prototype to evaluate user experience. So it really depends what you're testing. You don't need to go the full hog and produce the product completely. You can test certain things on a simple paper prototype. And of course the other thing this does is it demonstrates a little bit more to the person you're talking to on what the purpose of this is, what the purpose of your product is. I don't think we need to see much more of this, but you can just search paper prototypes online. You'll see various versions. Oops. So those are all technical prototypes, ways of showing the feasibility of how the product works. But what about market prototyping? How can we test our market? So would any group like to volunteer their product to put up to scrutiny? So who was the group I was talking to earlier about the sledge and the you guys? Okay, yeah. Oh right. Oh, sorry. Is this nothing to do with this? Oh, dear. No, let's take another group. Well, actually, do people know about this project? No. Okay. Would you like to quickly stand up and just describe your idea, or is it confidential at this stage? Okay, go ahead. You're on film, don't forget.
So our idea is basically safety wheels for parents with small children who want to travel around during winter. And the main idea behind it is because in Tallinn during winter there is heaps of snow, and in other places there is asphalt. So when you want to go from snow to asphalt, you just push on a lever and the wheels activate, and you can continue your travel to the destination. So that's the main idea.
Okay, thanks very much. So permit me to repeat that back just one more time because I got the microphone. This is a kind of a mix between a sledge and a pram. So when it's snow on the ground, you can pull your children in a sledge, but then you go into a shopping mall or some asphalt and you can put up the wheels and then you can pull them around using a pram. So what are the questions with this? What are you worried about with your product in terms of its market?
we're not sure how old the children are who are willing to sit in the sleigh.
Okay.
That is one question.
Okay. So can we think how you may prototype that?
Well, you can just go out during winter and see how old the children are, which are sitting in sleighs and their parents are pulling it.
Exactly. You could do questionnaires of people who are using sleighs at the moment. But I think there's some market questions about your product, perhaps. So do you know what your price point is at the moment?
Currently, we are thinking about 45 euros. Yeah, which is the end price.
Okay. So how might you test that? How might you prototype your market position or your cost? Anybody got any ideas how they can validate whether 45 euros is a good price for their sledge pram?
You can just give the software to some group of consumers and ask them, are you willing to pay for this solution, that kind of money or not?
Okay, so you can send out questionnaires and just ask them, are they willing to pay? Now, this is a slight problem in the sense...
Because they could be willing, but they won't.
Exactly. And there's nothing quite like actually paying. So,
Do we have the prototype yet at this moment?
well, we're at a stage that they just got a drawing at the moment. Oh, you do? Okay. Okay.
We just walk into the street and maybe show them how it works, if it works, or if not, like just put it in hands, like it, you can do this and that, how much you can shop.
So you can...
It's a shame, it's not winter, it's summer, so
Yeah.
we can test the wheels right now, but we cannot try it on the snow. We have to try it on the sand right now.
So...
But yeah, we can take here picture or what customers or what consumers.
So the issue with these is asking, would you buy it, is not the same as somebody actually buying it. And as an investor, I'd be sat here thinking, okay, well, they've told me 10 people in a survey said they would buy this product, but I haven't actually seen any of these products being sold really. So can we have a market prototype which gives me a little bit more assurance that people will actually put down 45 euros and pay for this? Is there anything more we can do?
Try to put it on eBay.
Put it on eBay? And what happens when somebody buys it?
Because right now we are at the moment, our prototype is like a Lego.
Yeah.
It doesn't look like, when customers see it, they tell me it's not good.
Okay. So that's a slight problem.
Designing a new model, it takes money, and we have maybe want to be sure we're designing the right way.
So you might need to get a graphically better model. Okay.
We can give this prototype to the user for free trial, like
Yeah.
let's say 1 month. After they want to use it, they have to pay us.
Good idea. And that way you actually get a sale. The problem is, I guess, you haven't got a production ready prototype and you don't want to necessarily give it. But one thing you could do is put the project on Kickstarter or one of these crowdfunding websites saying, who would like to pre-order one of these for 45 euros when it comes about? What about just getting a graphic model of the sledge pram up and running and having a click here to buy function on the website? And when somebody clicks it, it flashes up, thank you for showing your interest, you can pre-order. So then you can take to the investor and say, well, we've got evidence to show people actually want to buy this because 10 people actually clicked the buy function on our website. Maybe it's not ready and up and running yet, maybe it's misleading or pissing off your customers. But nevertheless, it's some more evidence. You can go that step further in showing people are willing to part with their cash. Let's think about this sunscreen product that we talked about earlier. Think about some of the burning issues of it. I could come up with a number of questions before releasing this product, such as how much variety is required in sun protection factors? What are the primary locations for sales needs? Will customers change their mindsets and habits? How many people will forget to bring sun cream with them? What are customers willing to do to receive the product? and what is required dosing size of the product. So these are all questions I don't know the answer to, but we could easily investigate these through prototyping. So let's just take the first one. How much variety is required in sun protection factors? How could we investigate this? Bearing in mind, I don't necessarily want to put up 100,000 euros to get a load of different versions of this product made up. Is there anything I can do to test it beforehand?
Go to the beach.
Go to the beach, and how would I test it?
What kind of SPF cream are they using? What number?
This is not a bad idea. Okay.
I guess maybe see statistics from other companies.
You can look at statistics, absolutely. Any other suggestions? Well, the problem with those suggestions there is you're in a situation where people might have bought the product with them already, or these might be people who have bought the product in supermarkets those statistics are for. So what about we set up a stand next to an ice cream van with a variety of different sun protection factors, and we just give them away for free. People can come and use whichever ones they want. And then we get a whole day's worth of people using, or a whole year's worth of people trying out these different sun creams, and we can just monitor how much each one's being used. I don't have to pay anything up front to get the production systems in place, but I can work out, okay, 80% of people are using factor 30. Let's not bother with the other factors to begin with. Let's concentrate on this factor. I can get that data straight away without having to put much money up front. What are the primary locations for sales? How might we investigate that? Okay. Ask the customers?
Yes, customers.
Okay. You could ask the customers where are you most likely to need it. And that could give you a range of options of where you could sell it. But then perhaps you could go a stage further and say, okay, these are the 10 options of the places we could sell it: cricket grounds, theme parks, beaches, and so on. Then why not just give them away at these different locations and see how much is used at the different locations, or how quickly a certain amount is used up at the different locations. And that will tell you where your primary market is. These are all market prototyping ideas. They're testing through using some kind of version of the product to gain insight into your market. Let's just take one more. How much are customers willing to pay for the product? Is there a way we could do that for this product? No ideas of how I could decide on what my price point is for these sun cream sachets? I mean, you were suggesting £1 is extortionate. How could we find out? Maybe you're right.
Customer surveys.
Customer surveys. But think in terms of prototyping. Customer surveys are good, but we could actually have the real evidence by...
Develop the prototype and ask people how much they'd be prepared to pay for it.
Exactly.
Looking at the physical object.
I mean, we don't even have to develop the final product. We can just have the pots of cream. Go ahead.
We can sell small portions of bottles, maybe.
Yeah. Just decant them into small portions and have different pricings at different sites and see what people are willing to pay and when they're willing to pay. So in other words, you can find out a hell of a lot about your market with just making crude mock-ups of your product. It doesn't have to look like the final thing. So we've got 10 minutes or so left. So with your last 10 minutes, I'd like you to think about the burning questions that were raised by the opposite team earlier today, and think about what testing and prototyping you could construct to answer or put their minds at ease of the questions they were asking.